Hello everybody, welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join us for another season review. And this one means I've done the entire top 7 now. And if you're a Bournemouth fan, you would have been waiting for this one. We're going to have a look. Cherries in the playoffs, how they did it. Going to go through the whys and the wherefores of this season at Bournemouth, which has been an interesting one. A year one parachute team. The first season down for Bournemouth. They're going to be in the playoffs. Complete transparency. It's Friday the 30th of April. There are still 2 games to go this season if you're watching a little bit closer to the playoffs. So we don't yet know Bournemouth's opponent, but we do know how it is they have ended up there. Let's have a look. And where to start, of course, the end of an era. Eddie Howe, an open letter there. He left at the end of the previous season and Jason Tindall was appointed. Now, we don't need to go chapter on verse on the magnificent work of Eddie Howe at Bournemouth, taking them really all the way up the divisions and then sustaining them up in the Premier League. Now, as we discussed in the Watford video, though, the longer you are in the Premier League, the more bills and liabilities that you build up whilst you're there, which is fantastic whilst 100 million quid a year broadcast money is coming in. But the second you go down, it is problematic. And Eddie Howe decided that his time was done at Bournemouth in the summer. And by way of attempting continuity, Bournemouth chose Jason Tindall, his assistant, as the boss. Now, I can't sit here and speak out of both sides of my mouth because on all of these videos, I promote the idea of continuity when you are relegated. That you have certain advantages when you are relegated, i.e. you'll maintain some Premier League players. You can utilise that parachute money if you're in a financial state to do it. Maybe Bournemouth weren't. And if you can thread the pattern of play and things that were used and successful in the Premier League into the Championship, you should, by virtue of the fact you're playing at a lower level, even maybe without a few of those players, still be able to maintain a pretty high level of competence. My broader point being is that I don't want to sit here and say, being wise after the event, oh, they should have gone for a new face, really, that wasn't in the Eddie Howe era, because I'm constantly talking about the continuity when you're going down. Now, I do understand the argument, though, that sometimes, well, in most occasions, actually, the assistant stepping up doesn't tend to work, does it? We've seen it twice this season with Dean Holden and Jason Tindall at Bristol City and at Bournemouth. In the past, I don't know, people like, I think Sammy Lee did it post Big Sam. I think Mick McCarthy and Terry Connor. I think Terry Connor did it post Mick at Wolves. Kevin Blackwell and Neil Warnock. Just never quite seems to work out. It's seemingly neither nor. You don't get the continuity and you don't get the new ideas, do you? So anyway, in comes Jason Tindall. I guess we spoiler alert that he's not going to be there too long. However, there's plenty of work to be done in the meantime, as in summer clear out. Now, I remember reading an article, it did have Matt Slater's name on it, and he's a very good journalist for The Athletic, saying that the Bournemouth financial situation wasn't good. As I said, you build up a lot of liabilities in the Premier League. Remember, Bournemouth's kind of gate receipts, commercial revenues, not great, really. And quite an idea that back payments on transfers still needed to be made. Look, nobody comes down in a good state. Well, unless you do a Norwich and go up for one season and don't spend. That's the only way you're really going to come down in a good state. If you've tried to compete in the Premier League, these are problems you're going to have. And Bournemouth, 2 unique features. One, COVID. Obviously, they're one of 3 teams to get relegated during COVID and the financial problems that brings, on top of the fact that in Premier League terms and attendance terms and commercial revenues terms, They are a unique case. There's been no stadium that small down there, I don't think. And obviously that is a problem in this modern football world when clubs are seemingly judged on how many hospitality boxes and 8K cameras and how many people can they entertain on a match day and how close are they to the major travel networks rather than who has the best team and who scores the most goals and points. But there we go. That's a rant for another day. The big thing is, look at the outs. Ake, out, 40 million. Wilson, out, 20 million. Ramsdale, out, 18 million. Arter, out, touching 5 million. And then a lot of squad clearance as well. If you want to, as always, if you want to question any transfer fees, send transfer marked, a strongly worded letter with your evidence of what the transfer fee actually is. Sometimes people get very pedantic about these things. But needless to say, star players were sold. I'm not saying no quality was left. I'm saying star players were sold in order to quickly cash in. And I've likened this, in Bournemouth's case, Ramsdale, Ake and Wilson would have been the equivalent of Norwich selling Pukki, Buendia and Krull, maybe. So it would have been a vital drop-off in the quality of the Bournemouth 11. Not saying there was nothing left over. There's clearly some good players left over, as we'll know after years in the Premier League. One issue was, though, Riquelme and Carter Vickers both on loans. That's it. So very much a sense from the Bournemouth higher-ups that Jason Tindall was told, right, here's your gig, Jason. You've got to raise a load of money because we're in financial trouble. You've got to streamline the squad, cut the costs. You can't bring any players in, and you've got to get promoted with what you're left with. That was basically the job for Jason Tindall. And, I mean, fair dues to him because he stood up and it was his time. And, he had a go at it. And unfortunately, it's not going to work out. But it was working out. There is 20 games there. Left column is left as you look is the first 10 and right is the second 10. 2 defeats in 20 games, 10 victories, 8 draws. So 2 draw heavy to be 2 points per game, which projects 92 and generally wins you the title. Well, that's a really good start. Bournemouth at Christmas in second position. Lots of good wins in there. Look, they beat Norwich into the bargain. Big one there against Reading when they were 2-0 down. Reading were flying high at that point. A big one at Barnsley. Obviously, Barnsley weren't in hyper super mode there. And look, a 5-0 against Huddersfield. And, nearly 2 points per game and only 2 defeats. It was working, this remit of cut costs, work with what you've got, essentially, and get Bournemouth in that top 2 or in those playoff positions. Remember, particularly with relegated teams and parachute teams, we can't judge them until we know that season is over because you can still get up in the playoffs. So I was asked repeatedly last season about Scott Parker and I said, it doesn't matter because he could still get in the playoffs and he could still win the playoffs. And if he does, job done. And it was a sense of job done up until Christmas for Tindall. There were more outs though. Look down there. Simpson to Rangers, Travers to Swindon on loan. However, Gosling and Josh King, that rumbled, didn't it? Josh King. So another 2 saleable assets, experienced player. You'd think if King was of the right mind and played 35 games in the Championship, there'd be plenty of goals there for him. But off to Everton he goes. There was a little bit of a push here, but again, nothing really spent. We don't know what the Ben Pearson transfer fee is. That's undisclosed. Again, write a strongly worded letter to transfer marked. Shane Long in on loan to replace Josh King, I guess. Jack Wilshere, who'd been at Bournemouth before, but a bit of a sense with Wilshere. Huge, high-quality player, but can you get him on the pitch, do pay-as-you-play deal? Are you going to be relying on him for 3 years of 30, 40 appearances in the league a year? No, I don't think you are. So that was what Tindall was given, and that was the final load of players out. For now, remember, if Bournemouth do not go up, expect a few more to go in the next window in the summer. Problems, though, because there is the post-Christmas slip. Defeat at Brentford in an absolute ripper of a game. And do you know, Bournemouth were outstanding in the first 15, 20 minutes of that and ended up losing it. Problems. Good win at Stoke then, But look, draw with Millwall and then 4 straight defeats. Bit unlucky against Luton, weren't they? Jeff Lerma was red carded and then the red card was rescinded. Lost at Derby, lost at Reading. And the final straw, sadly, for Jason Tindall, 2nd of Feb, at home to Sheffield Wednesday. Obviously, 6-point deduction down at the bottom. Late goal. Jordan Rhodes, I think, wasn't it, in that game. And in 6th position now, 8 points off the top 2, obviously having been in the top 2 just those 7 games before. And the ownership, the higher-ups, they blink. Out goes Jason Tindall. Now, think of it what you will. I've kind of suggested what the gig was for Tindall. Keep the continuity without half of the players, and you can't bring anyone in, and try and get us up. Still a chance. No one will know. No one can argue definitively that Bournemouth wouldn't have been promoted with Jason Tindall. You don't know that. However, I have heard anecdotally, and I have to say we were doing a watch-along of that last game, Bournemouth-Sheffield Wednesday. So I think I watched the entire second half. We were split in between games. And you can go back and watch the footage. It's there for posterity. I kept saying something is not right here. I was looking at the Bournemouth players and what was going on and the dynamic between the bench and the pitch. And yeah, I don't know. It's overused, isn't it? Lost the dressing room and the psychology and all of that stuff. But something didn't seem right. I mean, I could be clutching at straws here at that point. So there you go. We'll never know. What we do know is that there is an interesting postscript with Mr. Jonathan Woodgate, who arrived and was appointed to coaching staff on February the 1st. Jason Tindall was relieved of his duties on February the 3rd. On the 21st, it was announced that Woodgate was to remain in charge, him having been given the caretaker gig on the news that Tindall was gone. So it doesn't take a great leap for, or a tinfoil hat to go to the idea that Woodgate come in, Tindall go in, and then I don't know, it does feel like Woodgate must interview very well, and maybe some people were convinced, and it would be very unsightly and not nice for Jason Tindall, of course, who is a professional, who's been doing this a long time, to have essentially his replacement brought in while he was still there. The facts are that is how it turned out. Whether that was the long-term plan or not, who knows? That's what happened. And Woodgate is a coach, then a caretaker manager a couple of days later, and then he's the manager a couple of weeks later. And again, the questions, continuity. I mean, really, what can you do outside of a transfer window in February of a championship season? Unless you're going to... Well, I'm trying to think of anybody you could bring in who's going to change anything other than a few tweaks and a bit of man management, which is what Woodgate was tasked with. Can he get Bournemouth from 6th place over the line and into the Premier League? We'll find out in, Bournemouth will hope 5 games' time for them from now. So, finding the formula I've put there, that is Woodgate's first 9 games. There was a win early on against Birmingham and one against Rotherham. A couple of defeats, including one against Cardiff. And at that point, Cardiff were going great guns under Mick McCarthy. Actually switched places with Bournemouth, and Bournemouth were out of the playoff picture at that point. A couple more wins. An important one against Watford, where Jeff Lerma was at the centre of everything, wasn't he? And then at Bristol City, then a draw and the defeat against Barnsley. So mixed, 12, 14 points in 9. Not the worst. Not the worst at all, but some defeats in there. But the point was, Woodgate was trying to find the formula. Look down the bottom there. You can see the 4-3-3, which had been preferred by Tindall for much of the season. Then in the middle, a short-lived 3 at the back. I think that actually coincides with both the defeats there against QPR and Cardiff. Then a sort of a 4-2-3-1, but Dom Solanke with Shane Long. So is Dom Solanke really a number 10? I'm not so sure he is. League position-wise, as I said, Bournemouth they're flitting on the edges of the playoffs now. And of course, with that defeat to Barnsley, I think that was the point where Barnsley went up and in. And forgive me if I'm wrong about that, but it felt about then that maybe a change into the guard was happening in the playoffs with Barnsley going on their winning streak also. But speaking of winning streaks, he does find the formula, Woodgate. And for those naysayers, you do have to give him some credit thus far for what I suggested, really, that you come in outside of a transfer window. What can you do other than maybe change the strategy, a few little tweaks? You know you're going to be using the same players. You know who you're going to be up against. You're midway through a season. And this winning streak would suggest Woodgate has a tick in his box so far as the Bournemouth, I say permanent manager. He's only got a contract till the end of the season, hasn't he? So, before you look at all the wins up there, look down the bottom. Carter Vickers is entrenched in the team now with Cook and Begovic behind him. Kelly and Stacey are the fullbacks. You can see Kelly is an injury there. I think Diego Rico's played a bit. Lerma and Pearson, that's obviously something that Tyndall didn't particularly have. Ben Pearson shoring them up in central midfield. And then the real key to it all is, well, two players, Billing and Danjuma. Billing being allowed to move forward, maybe gets to do a bit less defending. And he's been fantastic as a number 10, scoring goals and getting assists, really helping out Dom Solanke up top. And of course, Arnott Danjuma, who's been brilliant down the left-hand side and got in the EFL team, so got in my team of the season as well down the left wing. If you're a Bournemouth fan, you would be thinking, if I can just get David Brooks playing, could be lethal with those two inside forwards in a 4-2-3-1. And look at all the victories. Look, 3-0, 3-0, 2-0, 4-1. Goals flying in, 2-1, 3-1, 4-1. Brilliant performance at Millwall as well. And that shored up the playoff positions. I say that shored up. It came the next game, which was actually a bit of a disappointing one. A defeat at home to Brentford, who could be a potential playoff opponent, of course, in either the semis or the finals. We'll find out about that in due course. But look, tip of the cap for a great winning streak. And everybody did one, didn't they? Norwich 11 wins in 13. Watford 11 wins in 13. I think Barnsley seem to still be on their endless long streak of 2 points per game-ish or even above. Swansea and Brentford less so. Their streaks, Brentford particularly, came earlier in the season. And there you see Bournemouth, as things stand, Friday the 30th of April, in 4th position and confirmed in the playoffs. I suppose that would have been... Look, Woodgate's remit is basically, I would imagine, get them promoted and there you go, you can have the job. Surely it will be. It'll be the most harsh sacking in the history of football if he got them up and then he was booted out for somebody else. But so far, he's confirmed that playoff position. Can he get them over the line is the unresolved question for Bournemouth for the remainder of the season. Here is my summary of the season. Number 1, raise money fast. That's not Jason Tyndall's fault. That's not Jonathan Woodgate's fault. Blame COVID. Blame wealth inequality in English football. If you're up there a while, and I know we're going to get pedantic people say, "Oh, well, make sure that you're cutting your cloth accordingly." I suppose there is a bit of that, isn't it? You can point at a few Bournemouth big signings that haven't worked out, that were into the tens, over 10 million quid. But in the main, everybody has to sell. Anyone who's been up in the Premier League for more than 2-3 seasons has to sell. Next, Howe leaves. Tyndall, a shot at continuity. Say what you like. Look, Howe was going to go. That's fine. He did his time at Bournemouth and was hugely successful. So if your glass is half full, it's an internal appointment. You're sticking with one of your own. It's giving someone a chance, a younger coach, an English coach, all of that stuff. It's an attempt at continuity if your glass is half full. If your glass is half empty, it's not creative. It's not a big name. Maybe it needed a new broom after Eddie Howe. Whatever. whichever side of the tracks you fall on there. Speaking of tracks, on track at Christmas, all is fine up until Christmas Day there in the top 2. Then more assets sold, King and Gosling go. The slip happens and the plug is pulled on Jason Tyndall. In comes Woodgate again. I don't know what was discussed when Woodgate spoke to the Bournemouth higher-ups. He'll know, they'll know. What we know is Tyndall went out, he got the job. A month of transition followed by the winning streak. Obviously, finding the formula, kicked out the 3 at the back. Not going to end up using Shane Long. He's gone back to rehabilitate at Southampton. Pearson comes in, Billing goes. Number 10, the return of Danjuma from injury obviously helps. High-class player he is. And then you get the winning streak. So it's something I talk about, stability and continuity. Go figure. Once Woodgate's feet are under the table and he gets a few games at it, the quality does out and the trend up was, well, it wasn't like that. It was like that. It was a 7-game win streak, wasn't it? And now it just leaves us with playoffs, and we have a year 1 parachute team in the playoffs with a lot of high quality players. I made a note, I scribbled down before we started. So they've lost both games to Brentford, have Bournemouth. They have drawn and defeated Swansea. They have a 3-0 aggregate against Swansea. And an incredible aggregate over Barnsley of 6-3. So that sounds like a potentially exciting playoff semi-final. And I will say, and this was before Barnsley went on their really tremendous winning streak, one of the best performances at Barnsley was by Bournemouth. Managing to, when those 3 centre-halves push up, managing to exploit the space behind, get in front and then play them on transition. They won 4-0. It was a super performance by Bournemouth in that game. I wonder whether that will be in Barnsley's heads or whether they're high as a kite with their superb form that they've had since. So, Bournemouth will be in the playoffs. And this is very binary. I don't think something can be very binary. It's either binary or it isn't. There's a point of binary. But you know what I'm saying? This is binary. They either go up or they don't now. And that really informs what happens in the future at the club, doesn't it? If they go up, I assume Woodgate keeps the job and they go into the Premier League and they're going to be able to bank 100 million quid TV money. And that keeps that club in with the big boys. We talk about the financial cliffs. The biggest cliff, or the biggest couple of cliffs, are Premier League to parachute and then parachute down to Championship. You want to be in one of those top 2 tiers, essentially, in the broadcast revenue stakes. So if they go up, obviously highly desirable. If they don't go up, you would imagine the likes of, and there are young players there as well, Lloyd Kelly, Arnott Danjuma, I suppose Billing would be a saleable asset. Solanke scored goals this season. Brooks, someone would take, wouldn't they? You would have thought lots of links with him through the summer. So plenty of saleable assets left, despite the clearing of the decks of Ake and Ramsdale and Wilson and King and Gosling and Arter and on and on and on. So it's a very interesting sort of tipping point now for Bournemouth, because once you go into that second year, yes, you do get 35 million on the parachute, still a huge advantage, but it's a huge advantage, not everyone uses it, as people are at pains to point out to me, but still a huge amount of money in Championship terms going in, not in Premier League terms, of course. So we will see what transpires. I put a tweet out earlier today asking fans of the playoff teams who they would like and which opponents would be good. So I will leave it at that and say that the most important chapter of the season is still yet to happen. Of course, there'll be plenty of coverage on that on the channel when we get into playoff weeks. So look, that is the story of the Cherries in the playoffs, how they did it. And can they go the final mile? If you're interested, if you enjoyed this video, I have now, as I said, done the entire top 7 in the Championship. Similar video, sort of 20, 30 minute deep dive into their season. So if you do want to check out potential playoff opponents, Barnsley, Swansea and Brentford have all been covered for sure. So do go and check those out. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We'll be all over it during the playoffs. And don't worry, we are a championship channel. If Bournemouth should get promoted, we have a lovely show called Dearly Departed covering the teams that do go up. So well worth hitting that subscribe button. More importantly, though, and the key of YouTube is that you can tell me what you think in the comments. And I'd love to hear from you about anything I've said. As I said on a couple of these videos, we normally, in the main, get great replies that people are really pleased that someone's taken the time to do a deep dive on their team. We do get the odd fan that doesn't like somebody who doesn't support their team talking about their team. So hopefully you can override that me being the outsider thing and get your comments in on my ideologies and sort of hypothesis on your team. I'd love to hear yours, and I hope you've been interested in mine. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Get your comments in on Bournemouth and their season and what may or may not happen for them in the playoffs. Over and out. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.